Today's topic is internal audit and the company secretary. She has written only internal audit, but I want to connect, though it is somehow says that how both are connected, but we as a Mehta Mehta, why it is not possible. And as our Mr. Bala has quite back only written a good article in Taxman, that internal audit by company secretary, and he himself has carried out years ago. Why not today? CS can do internal audit. And this is the function which CS can, and a professional, whether in employment or in practice, will surely carry it out. Again, of course, we have to compete and we have to prove ourselves. Then only we will be given this opportunity. But why not we explore this and create ourselves and make known that yes, CS can do internal audit. And in view of that, today we have a panelist who are CS come in charge of internal audit. We have with us Mr. Nilesh Butch, who is ACA, Chartered Accountant and Company Secretary with about 30 years of experience in industry. Presently is working for Mazda Colors Limited since December 2014. Earlier, he was attached to Keminova India Limited for 23 years, and he has a varied experience of both the field of Chartered Accountant and Company Secretary, and was responsible for internal audit and MIS, and as on today also the same. Now, we have another panelist, Mr. Sachin Khandekar. He is a qualified company secretary having experience of 10 years in handling regulatory compliance, corporate law, income tax, audit, SEBI LODR regulation. He is a compliance officer at Vakrangi Limited. It's a group and he is in charge of internal audit. And very few CS are there taking care of internal audit along with the secretarial function. And we are proud to have both the panelists experience in internal audit having a company secretary. Welcome to the board. And I will request Mr. Bala to say a few words on the topic, and the panelists, I request you to say your view, your experience on the topic and future, what CS can do, and then we can start our presentation. Thank you. Over to Mr. Bala.
Good morning to you all. I welcome you all for this today's session of internal audit organized by Mehta Mehta. This topic is very close to my heart because I always believe that we should not only constrain ourselves to the core subject like company secretary, we should expand even in other areas as well. One of the things which the 2013 Act has actually done regarding to the internal audit is the board of directors can appoint either the chartered accountant or the cost accountant or any other professional. So naturally, the Companies Act covered actually any other professional because the Company Acts very clearly recognized company secretary as an expert. We not only learn only Companies Act, we learn all the corporate laws, and we are basically from the commerce stream. And one more interesting thing is when the direct tax code, which was actually introduced way back in 2013 or 2014, there is a definition is actually there who's an accountant. So the accountant, they have actually included company secretary is also as an accountant. So with these things, the company secretary has definitely have a ability to contribute towards the internal audit. Rather, the internal audit is one of the new area which is actually brought out by the practice of the company secretary, which is actually less explored by the company secretaries. Of course, as Dipti has put it, there are few company secretaries who are taking up this internal audit function. We have Sachin, who's actually taken up the internal audit, and he has conducted the internal varied industries, and we will have the benefit of having his practical experience on the internal audit from the CS point of view. And Nilesh, who is also a financial chartered accountant and as well as the company secretaries coordinates the internal audit, etc. So we have both the experts in this panel and we'll have the practical view on that. In my view, this is one of the areas which is open, but less explored by the company secretaries. We have the more opportunity in this area because internal audit has been made mandatory for listed company and also the classified unlisted public group of company, even some of the private companies as well. So with this, I request some of the panelists to share their thoughts before we start the session. Over to Sachin, please.
Thank you, sir. I welcome all the participants. I thanks full to Deepthi ma'am for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts in internal audits, particularly. I've just shared with all the participants that actually we got the better opportunity for our field as a company secretary to do the internal audits. So particularly my point of view is that it's very easy for us to doing these uh, internal audits because internal audit is particularly doing this routine check. The routine check is doing because the company secretaries are already take a part of the stakeholders. Who is a part stakeholders of the internal audit is the process owner, who is doing the means the accountant, for example accountants and executives. They are the process owner of the internal audit particularly. Then all the head of departments, then CFOs, then audit committees, which are very good concern in this internal audit, particularly the statutory auditors, then the regulators and union investors. So particularly all these stakeholders which are take a part of internal audit, and as a company secretary we are touch with them in good in our profession. Also as a company secretary we are taken a part of this all the stakeholders already. So as an internal audit we also take part of this. So we are already know all this process. This is not a process of internal audit, but all the stakeholders of internal audit, we are going through this. So we are already communicate or all the concern for every our profession is we are connected with all the HODs already. We are connected with CFO. We are connected with audit committee. We are connected with statutory auditors. So it is very easier for us to doing the work in internal audit. It's very easier.
So I think you would rather say that it is right that CS should be given this job of internal audit.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, I would like to add one more thing. Nowadays, there is a more focus on the governance in any of the industry and any of the business.
Right.
If a internal auditor is a chartered accountant, then chartered accountant has got some limitation as far as the various acts which are applicable to the business.
You are right.
Chartered accountant is more focused towards the accounting aspect, financing aspect, whereas company secretary is having a better edge as far as understanding the various applicability of various laws. So it is having a much more impact if a internal auditor is having a background of CS.
Oh, great.
Not only that, there is one more aspect is there. Company secretary is being a compliance officer. The Companies Act itself says he has to actually ensure that the board comply with all the applicable regulations to the company. So in such a case, what happens is if the CS is actually given a job of the internal auditor on the ongoing basis, probably some of the compliances which is actually skipped or it is not seen, etc., and all the thing that can be actually complied, even though it will be a late complaint, but
yes,
instead of the non-compliances, at least the compliances will be definitely done. It will be ensured definitely. That is what I feel. That is what I have been doing also in my job. Because this will greatly help in ensuring the better compliance rather. Yeah.
One more thing I was added here. Actually, as per the industries, like we are doing work in various industries like pharmaceutical, entertainment, and whatever the manufacturing is there. So main thing is we have to go through the standard operating procedure of these industries, which are made by the management or board of directors of this company, particularly the industries. So we'll do the internal audit parallel to the standard operating procedures of this particular industries. After the findings and all the internal audit reports, we recommended to change whenever is required or amended the standard operating procedure of this particular industry. So whenever we have started internal audit for any industry, so one first need to check whether the standard operating procedures are standardized by this particular industry or not. So the standard operating procedure with the it's very important role play to start the audit. Because every industry or every the particular company or corporates, they have already their standard operating procedures.
Yeah, and again, I think in secretarial audit also, we cover all the laws applicable. So
Yes.
again, that covers Factory Act and all various acts and labor and HR and admin and operational law. So I think you are right. That way it is covering. So we are doing, it's extending, the depth will be more. That way we have to see.
Yes, yes.
Right.
The
Okay.
Yeah,
standard
but the
operating
secretarial audit happens at a later date, whereas internal audit
Yeah,
goes
yeah,
on
of course.
concurrently. So
ongoing,
we
yes.
can avoid certain non-compliances.
Correct, correct. That's
Right,
exactly
right,
the point.
right.
Because secretarial audit is happening up to the end of the year, the event has already taken place.
Yeah.
But the internal audit is an ongoing basis, which is actually being
Yes.
done periodically. So although the event has occurred, but if it is not done, there is still the time to rectify it, still the time to do the late compliances so that the compliances can be ensured better.
Yes.
Thanks for your input. I think we can start now presentation. Pranal, you can start your presentation.
Yeah. Ma'am, am I audible to everyone?
Yeah, very much.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah. Good morning, ma'am, and my other members. My name is Mrinal Ganesh Zorge, and my topic for today is internal audit and company secretary. So, yeah. So, the first question here is, what is internal audit? We all know that internal audit is an independent function which involves a continuous and critical appraisal of the functioning of the organization. It also helps us to suggest any improvements in the company. It also helps you to maintain accurate and timely financial reporting and collection of data. It also provides you with tools to attain operational efficiency. In case if there is some non-compliance or some problem has been identified, it gives you the relevant and remedial measures which are discovered before the external audit is conducted. For conducting an internal audit, an auditor has to have a depth understanding about the business cultures, the processes, the internal control system. The audit committee and the board with the internal auditor shall formulate the functioning, periodicity, the methodology for conducting the internal audit. Usually the power is given to the audit committee. If not the audit committee, then the board to define the scope of work of the auditor. So here we'll discuss about the scope of internal audit. The scope here is mainly to examine and evaluate the system of internal controls, sufficiency and dependability. It also helps us to ensure that the internal controls are in place throughout the company's activities. Internal audit covers the following areas. It helps you to review the policies, procedures for compliance, verify the accuracy and consistency of the information. It helps you to see whether the company has met the relevant objectives which it needs to comply in the near future. It also helps you to validate whether the assets are well protected and safeguarded. Applicability of internal audit. So we all know that internal audit is mandatory for all the listed public companies. Where
let it go slow, no, please.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry. Internal audit is applicable for all the listed public companies. It is also compulsory for some companies having a threshold, like private companies whose turnover is more than 200 crores during the previous financial year, or having outstanding loans, borrowings from any banks or any financial institutions of more than rupees 100 crore at any point of time during the financial year. It also includes some unlisted public companies whose paid up share capital is more than 50 crores during the previous financial year, or having turnover of more than 200 crore rupees during the previous financial year. It also includes public companies whose outstanding deposits is more than 25 crore at any point of time, or outstanding loans is more than 100 crores at any point of time during the previous financial year.
Nothing bar for the other companies to have the internal audit voluntarily on their own. And in fact, many of the companies, they have the internal control, because to ensure there is an internal control, the internal check is actually in place.
Yes.
Really help.
So shall I proceed?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Who can be an internal auditor? So as we know that a chartered accountant or a cost accountant can be an internal auditor, but now as per Companies Act 2013, any professional as decided by the board can be the internal auditor. Internal auditor can be an employee or he cannot be an employee of the company. So I have just elaborated the word chartered accountant and cost accountant. The term chartered accountant or cost accountant can also include a chartered accountant or cost accountant who's engaged in practice. And a professional can be any professional as decided by the board who has the relevant expertise and knowledge to conduct internal audit and other functions of the company. So types of audit carried out by the internal auditor.
So CS can be internal auditor, other professional.
Yes, ma'am. He can be internal auditor. I've covered that in my next slides.
That is coming actually. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So the types of internal audit are a compliance audit, operational audit, information system audit, performance audit, environmental audits, and other types of audits are financial audits, construction audits, integrated audit, special investigation audits, and follow-up audits. So compliance audit. Compliance audit helps you to evaluate an organization's adherence to the established laws, standards, policies. Usually the main objective in such type of an audit is to assure that the adequate controls over the important internal processes are seen. The compliance audit report is communicated to the CEO, CFO, and the related departments. The reporting is usually done to the audit committee. If the company does not have an audit company, then the reporting shall be done to the board of directors of the company. Operational audit. So this audit is undertaken at the instance of the management for providing it with the information and appraisal of the operations and activities. This type of audit focuses on the key processes, procedures, systems, as well as the internal control, which is the main objective, and helps to improve the productivity, efficiency, and effectiveness of the operations. This type of audit has also targeted the leak of key controls and processes, and that causes waste of resources, and then it can recommend for improvements thereto. Information system audit. We can say that this type of audit helps in the effectiveness of an information systems control, and they are evaluated through the information system audit. This type of audit usually aims to establish whether the information system are safeguarding the corporate assets. It helps you to maintain the integrity of the stored and the communicated data, and helps you to operate efficiently. It is more of a general financial audit that helps you to verify the organization's accounting records and financial statements. So you can say that information systems are usually designed that every financial statement is properly traced. So in layman words, I can say that an audit trail must usually exist, which will help us to establish that each transaction has been properly originated and how it has been processed. Performance audit. This type of audit refers to an independent examination of a operation, function of a governmental or non-profit or organization to assess whether the entity is achieving the efficiency and effectiveness in the available resources. The main objective here is to promote economical, effective, and efficient governance. It also helps you to contribute to the accountability and transparency. Performance audit usually promotes accountability by assisting those with governance, and it helps you to oversight the responsibilities to improve the performance. Environmental audit. Environmental audit is a type of environmental management tools. It helps you to measure the effects of certain activities on the environment against the criteria and standards set. The environmental auditor usually studies an organization's environmental effects on the nature in systematic and documented manner, and then shall provide an environmental audit report. Coming to special investigation audits, this type of audit usually aims at auditing the operations of a company at various levels, which helps you to achieve flawless and smooth functioning of its internal processes. These are usually carried out with the, you can say, with the mandate of the client to investigate a specific function which within a business, often on specific parameters. Financial audits. A financial audit is conducted with an opinion to see whether the financial statements are stated as per the specified criteria. The criteria usually here involved are international accounting standards, although the auditors can conduct audits as per the on cash basis or any other appropriate accounting system of the organization. Auditors conduct audit of financial statements, and which helps you to gather the evidence to determine whether the statements are free from any material errors or misstatements. Coming to construction audits, this type of an audit is used to review the various aspects of a project, and it helps you to ensure that everything is being performed appropriately within and keeping the same in contract. Since construction projects typically involve several entities performing a number of concurrent tasks, a construction audit is an important tool for keeping everything in track and under a proper budget. Construction audits are important as they help you to ensure that all the timelines are met. Integrated audit. This type of audit considers the relationship between the information technology, financial and operational controls in establishing an effective and efficient internal control environment. Hence, this type of audit evaluates the interplay between the financial, operational, and technology processes on achievement of control objectives. Follow-up audit. Follow-up audit is the, just a second. I'm so sorry. Follow-up audit. The follow-up audit is the evaluation of adequacy, effectiveness, and timeliness of actions taken by the management or responsible organization on reported observations and recommendations, including those made by the auditors. A follow-up audit is an audit designed to evaluate the effectiveness of corrective actions, that is designed to evaluate officially closed after the findings are recommended for closure of the follow-up audit process. So here we come to the main point, which says that can a company secretary conduct internal audit? So as per the Act, no substantial powers has been given to a company secretary for being an internal auditor, but yes, he can conduct an internal audit based on the following criteria. A company secretary will have to follow the accounting standards. He will have to do the audits of the company's statements, financial statements. He can also conduct timely and properly audits for seeing the true representation of the company's funding and financial risks in the business. He has to keep the records of the meetings properly. He can give an advisory on the financial usage and corporate litigation. He can also suggest some audit methodologies which can help the company to achieve its goals. And he also helps in the proper management of capital and debt, tax and planning. Responsibilities of an internal auditor. An internal auditor has to maintain an adequate system of internal control by continuous examinations of the accounting procedures, receipts and disbursements, and has to provide adequate safeguards against misappropriation of the assets. He will have to operate independently, and he should not be biased in any sort. He should not divest with any of the responsibilities placed upon him. He should see to it that he should not involve himself in the performance of executive functions in order that the objective outlook does not get obscured. He should be associated closely with the management and shall be abreast with the day-to-day occurrences and events affecting the business, as well as any changes made in the business and corporate policies. He has to observe the facts and situations and bring them to the notice of the authorities if they are unaware of the same. And he has to critically appraise the policies of the management and draw the attention of any deficiencies occurred while conducting audit, which can also help the company to achieve its goals. A scope of...
Just a minute. What is your experience, panelist, when if you find any deficiency or improvement, how it is taken by the management or company or as such? Not necessarily current, but earlier organization. So that helps to understand how it will get reacted or accepted. And even Mr. Bala, as you also done the internal audit.
In fact, I was lucky to have a board which really weighs in the pros and cons and take the corrective measures actually. Because I am fortunate to have such a board, because I normally used to give the presentation periodically one day before the quarterly board meeting to the board. What are the happenings? What are the latest updates which are coming? Where we are prepared, where we are not prepared, where we need the approval from the board or approval from the shareholders, etc. and other thing and all. In fact, coming to here, in case of the environmental issue, because our company where I was working is actually a chemical company. In the chemical company, we actually set up a unit in a village. When we set up the village, the first thing is there were a lot of obstructions, etc., which has actually come. I made a survey, etc., and other thing and all. The main concern was what, the main concern was if you put a chemical factory, if you discharge the effluents, that will actually get discharged on the flow, on the thing, earth, it will actually spread over, it will spoil the drinking water because the village was using a drinking water from the well water will get damaged. That was the basic concern. When I actually conducted, even before we commenced the factory, etc., I gave the feedback to my management. My management has said, first and foremost thing, even before we start the factory, we will put the effluent treatment plant. We will put the filtration plant. We will actually put up the whatever the chemical water generator is treated, it is recircled. The water is used inside for the garden, etc., and other things and all, etc. We won't discharge any water on the earth so that the surrounding things are not get actually, contaminated, etc. That is a step they have taken. So it is a very positive way of looking by the management, because which is the experience I always had with the management. And to be very frank with you, one of the places where we have taken the leased area in a Calcutta, where we are having a factory, it was actually taken the Port Trust of Calcutta. It was a very huge land in the sense people used to say we can play actually a volleyball there. Such a big place was there, even after the complete factory, etc. and other thing and all. And we run the factory almost about 50 years. Then later on, the 50 years later, we wanted to give back to the land to the Port Trust. Then that time when I went to the Port Trust, the very first thing they asked is, we will take back the land, but provided the place is actually not contaminated. This was the concern which was raised. Then I came back, I told the management. Management has taken it very, very positively. And we have actually conducted whether the place was actually contaminated. We found actually the place where we were actually using it, apart from the building, etc., other places were really chemically affected. With the result, the management took a decision. We remove all the surrounding places, the soil. We actually virtually dug something about 6 to 8 feet, removed all the soil, and they disposed of the way in which it is required to be disposed. They refill the new soil, and thereafter we actually surrender back the leased land. These are the positive things the management takes it, because my management was concerned. Compliance is the first, irrespective of the cost. That is the thing, because the cost versus compliance, when it comes, they always uphold the principle. It is actually the compliance is the first, irrespective of the cost. That was the thing. So I do not know, when we are working with the board members, how many people are lucky to have such a considerate board who listen to us. That is what it matters actually.
Yeah, Dinesh, your experience? You are on mute, Dinesh. You have to unmute.
Sorry. As far as this impact of internal audit on the operations of the company, sometimes it turns out to be beneficial. I'll share one example. In case of the factory operations, there are requirement of the attendance system and the minimum wage act and all that thing, which generally overlooked by many companies. So if you take a remedial action immediately on noticing certain violations, it will help the company in a great way. Similarly, as far as this take case of compliance with respect to the GST part, now there are certain provisions in which you need to have certain claims and the payments which are to be done in the specific time frame. Internal audit highlights wherever there are some you can say omissions, and where the credits are likely to be lapsed. So it's a real financial loss which internal audit can seal. So that way it is really beneficial to the management.
Thank you. Mr. Sachin, your experience here and earlier when you were with the chartered accountant and all that. Mr. Sachin, you are on mute.
Basically, we are doing practice of giving the action taken report of previous audit with the current audit report, so that the things will be observed, or findings on the previous audit will produce before the board, that how the action taken on this previous audit observations or findings, and what the action will be taken by the management, what the status of this particular action, and particularly the revenue leakage point. It should be importantly highlighted in the action taken report. Actually, management is basically, most of the management are interested with the revenue leakage points rather than the procedural part, because the procedural part has to be done in ongoing process. As an internal audit is an ongoing process, they will be implementing by day, and they will be a progress. But the revenue leakage point will take action on immediate effect. So we'll take on a practice of this.
Yeah, so I think in board meeting and audit committee meeting, this should be the permanent agenda, and as CS should always take care that this should be part of agenda on action taken report on internal audit report, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mrinda. Okay, Mrunal, carry on.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah. So coming to the scope of internal auditors' work, the scope includes internal control system and procedures, custodianship and safeguarding of the assets, compliance with the relevant policies, plans, procedures, and regulations, relevance and reliability of information, accomplishments of goal and objectives. So reviewing of the internal control systems and procedures. Here he has to assess the design and operational efficiency and effectiveness of the internal control system. The basic objective here is to minimize the overall internal audit risk, like the inherent risk or any other risk which comes across the audit. Review of custodianship and safeguarding of the assets. The auditor has to verify the existence of the assets. He has to review the control systems, and he should also review the means used for safeguarding the assets against the losses, like fire, any negligent activity, illegal acts, or thefts. Reviewing of the compliance with policies, plans, procedures, and regulations. It is important that various segments of an enterprise have to comply with various policies, plans, laws, so that this helps in smooth functioning of the business. By combining the results of the review of the auditor and adequacy of the systems with the result of his compliance test, the auditor will be able to evaluate the effectiveness. He can also point out some weaknesses which he comes across and can suggest some remedial actions. Review of relevance and reliability of information. He has to evaluate the reliability and integrity of the financial information. He has to examine the accuracy and reliability of the financial and operational records. He can also examine the reporting is by exception, that is the report highlights and the significant and distinctive features. Review of the accomplishment of goals and objectives. He has to review the overall objective of the enterprise to evaluate whether the goals have been attained or no. He has to examine whether the objectives are expressed in precise, quantifiable terms, which helps in detailed planning and also helps them easier to achieve them. Budgeting is the most important part of planning. So here we come to the integrity, objectivity, and independence of the internal auditor. The internal auditor should be free from any undue influences which force him to deviate from the truth. This independence shall not be in mind, but you can say it also should be through appearance. The internal auditor shall resist any undue pressure or interference in establishing the scope of the assignments. The auditor shall also be honest, truthful, and a person of high integrity. He shall operate in highly professional manner, and the same shall be seen in his dealings. He should see to it that he shall avoid all the conflicts of interest and not seek to derive any undue personal benefit or advantages from his position.
Mr. Bala,
yeah.
If we say that an employee can be, then if we say this will be, we not say it's not possible or it will not be there, but it is difficult to establish also. When an employee
here there are two things. One thing is there, the dividing line is where you actually report. Because if you are directly reporting to the audit committee and if you are actually given the independency, then this problem will not come. But whereas because you are within the person, you are moving with the people with the chief executive officer, managing director, etc. Then if you are actually influenced, no, you don't report this. If you report this, I will cut your increment. If the internal person. So what will happen to me?
So the director, that audit committee should make the even internal auditor directly responsible and available, make themselves available to the internal auditor or employee who is responsible for internal audit.
Correct.
Then this can be achieved.
Yeah, that is right. And not only that, what happens is here, one more thing is there very clearly. This section 143 of the Companies Act, if I am not mistaken, correctly remember, it says the external auditor has to actually comment on the internal control which are actually present in the company. He has to make a specific report on an internal control systems. Internal control system is normally works in the principles of, what you call maker checker. That means the person who is actually preparing the invoice should not be the person who will be receiving the cash. There is a possibility of, committing a fraud. That is why the segregation of the function is there. The external auditor who comes once a year, it will be very difficult for him to understand the things, etc. But the internal person, he can actually go through the things. And another thing is that in my experience, I actually come across when I was doing the internal audit, there are duplicate functions. There have been functions which can be actually combined together. There has been function which can also be eliminated. These are all the things which was actually there. So really speaking, we are all doing some duplicate, etc. This information available here, one department, whereas the other department is actually generating this information. This can be transferred here. Then immediately you have done the analysis. They put a, a sort of a cross-functional committee. I am talking not today in the IT time. I am talking about much earlier than the development of IT time. What they have actually created, the common drive. In the common drive, they specified these are all the information should be made available to the common drive, which should be accessible to these people. So suppose if I generate some information regarding to, debtor collection, etc., and all these things, which will be actually useful to the finance department, by creating the common drive, the finance department can access, they can actually analyze that, and they can make use of it instead of they themselves is working out. What I'm talking about, the duplication of the thing. These are the benefits the internal person can actually give by doing the internal audit, because he understands each function, he understands each department, he understands what is being done duplicate, what can be combined, what can be made use of it. That benefit is actually extraordinary.
View of other panelists?
That is why the large companies, they themselves are having their own team of internal auditor, which is directly reporting to the board, or maybe a finance director, who is independent from the operations. So as Professor Bala has narrated, it is really helpful if there is a concurrent audit, and before any lapse happens, it gets rectified immediately.
Yeah. Mr. Sachin?
Fully agree with Bala sir that internal audit, it should be the internal check should be given by taken by the internal team. But if there is lack of miscommunication or whatever the Bala sir says within the organization, that employees themselves, if they are doing this audit, that there should be some conflict between the audit committee or the internal employees. So it's better to give the right view from the external auditor, or who are not independent. It should be an independent person to do this audit.
And basically, when it helps the organization by system improvement and ensuring the efficiency, I think that management also get convinced, and they also give importance and accept the independent view also, right?
Yes, right.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, continue.
Just a second, ma'am. I'm just facing some technical glitch here.
Okay.
Yeah, so internal audit report. At the end of the particular audit assignment, the internal auditor usually issues an internal audit report, which covers the specific areas, functions, or parts of the entity, highlighting the key observations arising from these assignments. This report is generally issued with details of manner in which the assignment was conducted and any key findings or observations which the auditor came across while conducting the audit. This report is issued to the auditee and the other copies are also shared to the executive management or any other key persons as agreed during the planning process. Key elements in the report. This report contains an overview of the objectives, the approach of the audit assignments. The same is as it can also, the report also contains the facts that the auditing standards have been properly complied to, and summary of the key observations covering the important aspects and specific to the scope of the assignment is also highlighted. A summary of the corrective actions or remedial actions for each observation is also given. Benefits of internal control. The scope of internal control is defined by the management or the board of directors. Internal audit is directly reported to the management or the board of directors. It helps the organization in various forms, and it makes the organization process dependent rather than person dependent. It is like an early warning signal which helps to detect the deficiencies and which can be identified and rectified on timely basis, and also helps you to increase the accountability within the organizations. So the stages of internal audit process. It helps in establishing and communicating the scope and objective of the audit to appropriate members of the management. It helps you to develop and understand the business areas under review. This includes the objectives, measurements, and involves review of the documents, flowcharts, any narratives, if any, created. It helps in describing the key risk factors which a company or a business activity can come across, which is within the scope of the audit. It also helps in reporting the issues and challenges which are identified, and it helps in negotiating the action plans with the management and helps you to address the problems. Following up is usually done on the reported findings at appropriate intervals. Objectives of internal control. It helps to establish a better policy and procedures. It helps to improve the...
I'll go to earlier slide, please.
Pardon, ma'am?
Earlier slide, please.
Yeah.
No, can you highlight something on developing and executing risk-based sampling and testing approach to determine whether the most of the management controls are operating as intended? Panel, please. The fifth point, developing and executing and risk-based sampling and testing approach to determine whether the most of management control are operating as intended.
You are talking about the fifth point, is it?
Right, right.
See, I'll tell you one thing here. It is a personal experience I would like to share. The company where I was working, there are two issues which has actually happened. One issue is this company has been established during the, what you call the controlled regimes, not in the liberalized regimes. Right. We have the controlled regime. Everything is, what you call licensed procedure. If you want to have the horse, you need to have the license. If you want to ride a horse, you need to have a license, like that. So what happens is the expansion was not permitted in many places. And we have been told that you open the factory in the backward areas, you go to the designated areas, you do this, you do this. With the result, the company actually started many divisions, many manufacturing units. The company had started the manufacturing division in place like Pondicherry, place like Jamshedpur, place like Jammu and Kashmir. Like that, they have started various manufacturing companies and they have taken the lease. What has happened is, some other in Jammu, they have taken the leased land. They have been actually working with the leased land. Then almost after 30 years, suddenly the change has taken place in liberalized regime. What you call LPG, liberalized, privatized, globalized regime, which has actually come. Company wanted to consolidate it. Instead of having the 5 manufacturing unit, if we have 1 unit in the central place, the overheads will be reduced. Instead of having 5 works manager, we can have 1 manager. We can have 5 different divisions, 5 departments in 5 different places. We can be unified. All those thought has come. Then they wanted to give the voluntary retirement scheme. They wanted to give up the places, etc. The one glaring example which came is, they actually given the voluntary retirement to the people in Jammu and Kashmir. They wanted to return the leased land back. I've been told, why don't you do one thing? Because that time the Jammu Kashmir was a problem. Nobody wanted to travel actually. It was a much afraid place, especially the picture like Roja, which has actually come. And after seeing the picture Roja, people were afraid to travel to Jammu Kashmir. That was the time I am talking about. So I said, okay, let me go through the documents, let me study, because you know the lease agreement, etc., which is entered is much before. I think I was not involved in this. But anyway, let me go through and I'll come back. When I gone through the things, you know what happened? The glaring thing which has actually happened was we cannot have the right to give the lease land back to them before the expiry of the years on our side. But on the contrary, if you have done any non-compliance, the lease can be terminated by them. There was no provision. That means even after vacating the place, even after discontinuing the place, we cannot refund because we have not done any non-compliance. Then I told them, this is what it appears to be. Either what are you talking? Yeah, you see the clause very clearly. This is what it is there. We have signed it. We are bound by this. So you can't give the land back. Then immediately they gone through how we missed, who done. I think there is no point in talking who done, what done, etc. Done is already done. Now what should be the rectification action? Then I said, let me check up. I took a travel. I went to J&K government. I spoke to people. I met the industrial minister there actually. I've been told very clearly, unless until there's a government order, what you call GO, is passed to this effect, you will not be able to hand over the land back. Or otherwise, you will have to do some non-compliant, we will have to issue the notice, then thereupon a termination could come, or that also we can't say sure, we will give the opportunity to rectify. I told them, nothing is there, everything is closed on the voluntary thing, manufacturing discontinued, what is to be done? It was a hell lot of hassle to convince those people and tell them and get the government order issued. It took almost about 1 year to the government order issued by them to surrender the land back.
Oh.
Arising out of that, then I told the management, we are having a various properties in many places. First of all, we have to go through the title. Anybody has checked the title? Do we have the title deeds? Do you have the things? What are the agreements? What are the things? What are the title deeds? We would like to go through. He said, you take up a job. You're doing the internal audit. No, you take up this job. He said, okay, I'll take it up. When I took it up, to my great surprise, I found out in a place like Pune, we had a residential accommodation which is built by the HDFC Corporation those days. Now it is what you call Housing Finance Corporation. Now those days it is the HDFC Corporation. The Maharashtra government has allotted the land for the benefit of the companies where they can build a house and allot to the employees. It is a lease land again. It is given by the Maharashtra government, but it is the land is developed by the developer, that is HDFC Corporation, and the builder has built it. There is a tri-party agreement between the company and the HDFC developers and the government. And then ultimately the unit is built and it is actually handed over. When everything was handed over, what happens is there is a lease agreement is there, which is actually signed. But finally, the agreement for handing over the property agreement is never signed by the company. With the result, the company never had the title deeds of this residential accommodation, which is more than about 30 accommodation, which were there. So tomorrow, if you want to sell, you don't have the title deed at all. That was the situation. When I brought out to the notice, then again, company said, what is to be done? We'll have to get the title deeds now. By the time HDFC Corporation is actually closed, they have, started the HDFC Housing Finance Development Corporation. You will not believe it has taken 3 years for me. Finally, get the title deeds. We have signed the tri-party agreement almost after a period of 25 years. And again, the stamp duty has come. What is the stamp duty payable? Stamp duty payable, which was prevalent 30 years back, which is prevalent in today's date. Okay. Then we will have to go to the superintendent of the stamp, we will have to make an appeal, etc. Luckily, they have realized the problem. So they have permitted us to pay the stamp duty at the 30 years back prevalent rate. That is what you have done. Once I have done, you will see the subsequent consequences. There are a lot of industrial houses in Pune. They also not executed the title deeds for the tri-party agreement. Many people have contacted me personally. Bala, how did you do it? What is the thing? What is the procedure? Whom to contact? What to do? Etc. And all the things. Not less than dozen of companies they have contacted. This is the situation. So if you are doing an internal audit, all these problems can in-house can be eradicated instead of relying upon. Because as rightly said by Sachin or other panelists also, the external auditors are basically going into the numbers, debit and credit, financial statements, accounting standards, standard operating procedure, standard auditing procedure. Whether the objective is only to reflect whether the financial figures recorded are reflecting in the true and fair view. Nothing beyond that. Rest all the things comes only with the company. So as rightly puts it here, the company secretary is now given a responsibility of ensuring the compliances under all the applicable laws. That is very important. In this case, prima facie, the company secretary has to actually start building in a list down what are the applicable laws, the list of applicable laws. I have done this exercise in the company. The company was a medium company which was having 2 locations after the LPG because they had about 5 manufacturing units. We have closed down 4. We have opened 1. So it is actually 5 minus 3 plus 1. That is how it has become. And in 2 of the locations, when I listed down the applicable acts, in a small company, medium-sized company, around turnover of 300 crores or something like that, you will not believe, in Pune location, there were almost about 93 laws are applicable to Pune locations. In the Pondicherry location, it is 102. You'll ask me why. Because Pondicherry being coming in the village, there is a Panchayat Union Act. It is in the coastal area, Coastal Union Act. They have different act of the power generation and etc. and other things and all. So these are the certain things which was actually there. So first thing is I generated all the applicable law list. Then I generated, those days computer was not there. Computer has come now much more. So those we used to work with manually. I virtually created the register whereby all the applicable laws, identifying the process owner, who's in charge, HR, these are HR people, these are environmental people, these are production people, they are the safety related people, these are the security people, like that, identified, created, what is required to be complied, what is the due date, when it is complied. Virtually, I used all the, photocopy of this, send it by fax machine to verify whether it is done or not done. And wherever it is not done, I used to ensure the late compliance is done. So, it can be done because when you are talking about the point number 5, developing, executing the risk, you can identify the risk. You can develop a system. How do we mitigate the risk? How do actually avoid the risk? How we can actually rectify the thing? Those, all the things can come across from this point. That is what she's making it here.
And other panelists, you can share the experience without quoting the name of company. Means you must have faced some interesting, risk-based sampling and all that.
I don't think I can quote any other thing. Professor Bala has narrated in a very well manner. Yeah, what will be the implication of a normal audit and what is the importance of going back in the background of any particular transaction and how it is hurting or benefiting the company. Right. So there the role of internal audit is very vital.
Mr. Sachin, your experience in which you would like to share without putting the name as such?
Actually, I have just shared one experience, my past experience with all of you. That when we are doing the internal audits, actually we are follow the one procedure like the walkthrough process in each assignment. Each assignment we are doing some walkthrough process. We just communicate with all the department peoples. So how you feel like, what you action taken. It's a walkthrough process. You have just to talk with the department peoples and so one of the company we have just found that there is some wrong going on the purchase department or something. So we'll request the management to give us approval to take a special audit for this particular department. So they given the approval and the next assignment will take the special assignment on a purchase. So we found some wrong foundings or some there, and we'll take actual visit to the dealers, and we'll found there is huge revenue leakage point over the departments, and management also take immediate action on that, and they are surprised that how it is going to be done actually. So what will found this because of the walkthrough process, because the word derives the internal. There should be all things going on an internal part only, not a external. We've just taken the figure out the what the purchase is, turnover and sale turnover, whatever, but the internal things will not will observe by the external part. That the internal audit is taking the internally. We have to communicate with all the departments or the executives. Then we'll found something which is surprise the management for our part. So it was a very good experience that we have take some walkthrough process, and this little bit walkthrough process we found a huge revenue leakage point, and this management and company will get a very good result from the internal audit. So it was my one experience.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, parents. Nunal, continue.
Yes, ma'am. Objectives of internal audit. One of the most important objective of internal audit is to establish better policies and procedures. It helps to evaluate and improve the risk management system. It also helps to evaluate and improve the risk management system, internal control and governance process, also assists in better compliance law. It is used to avoid any unwarranted legal action and early detection of fraud. It maintains the integrity and helps in accountability, and also protects the interest of the shareholders. Provisions under the SEBI LODR regulations. As per the regulations of SEBI LODR, monitored by the stock exchanges, SEBI has thrown a tremendous responsibility on the audit committee, which is responsible to the board to oversight the management reporting on internal controls. And the internal audit plays a vital role in assessing and reporting risk management and internal controls of the organizations based on the 4 pillars of corporate governance, which is the accountability, transparency, and responsibility, which is coupled with fairness. Coming to the internal audit procedure. So a proposal from the company is given to the internal auditor from who shall accept the same. Then the areas, the scope of internal audit assignment is fixed along with the remuneration, which is approved by the board or the audit committee. Then the preparation and execution of the internal audit plan and strategy is done. Later, preparation of the preliminary report, which with observations, findings, recommendations of the internal auditor. The internal auditor shall also report any important observations, suggestions, and can give recommendations on any transaction processing. Then the management comments are invited and the action taken report is issued. And the latter stage in the procedure is submission of the final report for consideration of the audit committee, board of directors, or the managing director. So I've just put an extra slide between the distinction between the statutory auditor and the internal auditor. So as we know, as per auditing standards 610, the work of the internal auditor can be used by the statutory auditors.
In fact, the statutory auditor rely upon the internal audit reports for certifying the company as actually have the internal control systems and the internal checks with a reference to the size and volume of the company's business, which they are required to actually comment in their Caro report. Yes. That is one. And second thing is, as I said already, under section 143, the external auditor necessarily has to comment that they are satisfied with the internal control system which are actually prevalent in the company. These two things actually coming, the internal audit really help to the statutory auditor in ensuring the necessary internal control and checks are there in the company. Many times they rely upon the thing. Not only that, even the statutory auditors, very first thing is before they start the audit, they would like to go through the internal auditor's report. What are the areas covered? What are the things done? And accordingly, they decide their methodology of the checking, what is the volume checking, what is need to be concentrated, etc. Even before the audit plan is done. Because I've been actually interacting with the statutory auditors. So this was the experience.
There is a question in the chat box. Can an internal auditor be appointed for an indefinite period until his appointment or tenure is withdrawn by board?
Normally, the internal auditor, if it is the person of the employee, then this question does not arise, because so long as this is the internal auditor, he continues to be there as an internal auditor. And by the practically, we have seen the external auditor is appointed for each year. And again, the many companies, they actually change the auditor. And second thing is there is a requirement for the unlisted public company and the listed company. This apart from the private company, filing the form of MGT 14 for the appointment of the internal auditor, which is normally done for a year-to-year basis.
Yeah, Mrunal.
Yeah. Can I continue, ma'am?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so the statutory auditor is appointed in the annual general meeting, and for the internal auditor, he is appointed by the board of directors in the board meeting. The statutory auditor shall not be an employee of the company. He can be an independent third party. An internal auditor can be an employee or cannot be an employee of the company. Statutory auditor is mandatory as per the acts and laws. And on the other hand, the internal audit has to be conducted compulsory for the listed companies, and for the other companies, it depends upon the thresholds as per Rule 13 of the Companies Accounts and Rules 2014. The scope of the statutory audit is given by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, while the scope of internal audit is drafted by the board of directors in the board meeting. The statutory auditors, as appointed by the shareholders, can be removed by the shareholders itself, while the internal auditor can be removed by the board of directors in the board meeting. The reporting of the statutory audit is mainly done to the shareholders in the annual general meeting, while the internal audit report is submitted to the audit committee or the board of directors as required. So here we come to the conclusion that internal audit shall not be looked as an compliance burden, but it usually helps for the healthy growth of the company. Many a times it is observed that companies lay back on the preparation of the internal audit reports, as it is not compulsory under the sections, but the compliance officer or the company secretary or the person so appointed as the auditor shall ensure and explain to the other heads the importance, and shall maintain yearly and quarterly internal audit reports in proper manner. The chartered accountants, cost accountants, company secretaries, lawyers shall definitely try to explore opportunities in this segment, and they are considered to have the expertise and proper knowledge of the Companies Act, Income Tax Act, and other taxation laws and allied laws, which is a prerequisite while conducting an internal audit.
In fact, internal audit can also help, the early detection of the fraud and having a better control. I'll again share another experience. The company where I was working, they have the system, what you call perpetual stock verification system, physical stock verification. Because this company has been having almost about 5 places manufacturing units and about 35 places branch offices, out of which 26 places they have the branch offices with the stock godown warehouse. So the company actually wanted to have the better control on the inventory, especially on the finished goods. So they used to carry the physical verification of the stocks on a monthly basis with their internal stock. Only thing is the company actually somehow evaluated a procedure. There is something called a stock verification report, the adjustment can be done for the mistakes. For example, there is a typographical error. Instead of, stock A, stock B in the same variety. Suppose you are supplying a different grades of the similar material. Because in the chemical, there is a segregation. If you actually see the phenol formaldehyde, they talk about purity, 95%, 90%, 85%, 80%, like that. Similarly, if you are talking about some ferrosilicon, it is a graded again. Grade up with 60 mesh, 80 mesh, 70 mesh, like that. So what happens? The same material which is having a different grades. This company were also supplying the different graded material to the different industries, but the basic thing is the same. So what happens? The higher grade material is quite costly, lower grade material little lesser costly. Now what has happened when the stock verification take place? They actually found one of the graded material, the stock is more, other material, the stock is less. Oh, there seems to be some sort of the, mistake has taken place in book, we adjust it. So, what happened is set up from excess stock to the lower stock. So stock in totality it tallies, but the thing is differences in the grade, they used to adjust. Nobody thought there is a problem in this. When I was an internal auditor, I was actually watching continuously for about 6 months. In one of the particular branch, stock go down, very frequently, these adjustments are taking place for a selected items, about 7 to 8 items. I done the graph. It is gradually going up. It is happening only in this branch. This is what it is. I decided there seems to be some problem here. So I visited the branch. You will not believe, nobody wanted to dare to go to that branch. I can name the branch also. It was Chandigarh. Nobody wanted to go because Chandigarh was close to Amritsar. And the people never wanted to go. They always felt this is a problematic place. We used to call the information. Any of our company officials, they wanted to visit the people at Chandigarh. They used to go up to Delhi. They will call the Chandigarh people to come down to Delhi. They will have a meeting. They will come back. They will never visit Chandigarh. I have undertaken a trip to Chandigarh. Many people have advised me, you are taking a risk. Doesn't matter. It is destined here, destiny. If God has already designed this, nobody can change it. That's all. You will be surprised to know if I tell you, the branch manager there, he has applied his mind in the other way. What he has done is, he used to have a contract with a supplier. Oh, you actually want to have the higher grade material costing, say, 100 rupees per kilo. Okay, you do one thing. You place an order to me for the lower grade material, which is costing only 40 rupees a kilo. I will actually supply and invoice the lower grade material, but virtually you will receive the higher grade material of 100 rupees. It is actually costing 100 rupees to you. Okay. You place the order for lower grade material at 40 rupees only. I will give you the invoice of 40 rupees only. You make a payment 40 rupees only to the company. But the difference, that is 100 minus 40, 60, portion you keep it, portion we transfer to my account. How do you like it? And ultimately, the stock verification, oh, there is some documentation problem. Instead of this, instead of that, it has happened excess, and this, it is adjusted. This is what it was happening. By spending almost about 20 days time, I have found out this. Ultimately, the consequences has happened actually and other things and all, that's a different matter. But the application of the mind and skill, which is actually important, we have to always keep a constant watch. It is not only doing the internal audit, we have to also keep constant watch so that we can avoid such things.
It's actually very interesting area, and one can apply his own mind and experience and logical thinking so nicely and can creatively. But one should have that thirst and the love for that kind of work. Then it is really interesting area.
Correct, correct. You are right.
There is question in the chat box. Can an internal auditor or a statutory auditor certify Form AOC 4 of such company where they act in their respective capacity? I think there is no bar as such, right?
See, Sachin will be able to tell. Sachin is a company secretary. He is doing an internal auditor. If Sachin has actually got the certificate of practice for the company secretary, if he is carrying the internal audit for places, can he certify or not? That is the question. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Sachin?
Yeah, what the question is?
Can an internal auditor or a statutory auditor certify Form AOC 4 of such company where they act in their respective capacity?
Okay. Is such a, there is nothing is any provision regarding this, whether they have certified the form or not.
So that's why it can be.
Yes.
Another question is, in continuation to above, if no separate remuneration is being paid to the employee for the scope of internal audit compliance, how to comply? Oh, sorry, there is a question. In case of employee is nominated as internal auditor, this being it's one of the tasks, whether its salary is deemed to be remuneration requiring approval of shareholder at every AGM. Means whether remuneration of employee auditor requires approval of shareholder at every annual general meeting.
No, nothing.
It is related to internal audit task only, right?
Internal auditors.
So then there is no need of shareholder.
Internal auditor salary, if it is the employee of the company, it is not fixed by the shareholders, or it is not required. It is not required. Management.
Not required.
But if the external person is appointed as the auditor, then it is normally at the time of the appointment.
Employee cannot act as an external auditor.
Yeah, employee cannot act. But we are talking about the external auditor. If it is appointed, even then shareholders' approval is not required, because it is only the board of directors who appoints and whose approval will be required.
Yes.
In continuation to the above, if no separate remuneration is being paid to the employee for the scope of internal audit compliance, how to comply with the remuneration aspect, approval by shareholders?
I am not clear about the question, what the participant wants to ask.
In continuation to the above, if no separate remuneration is being paid to the employee for the scope of internal audit compliance, how to comply with the remuneration aspect, approval by shareholders? The
shareholders' approval is not required.
Not required.
Internal employee.
Not required.
See,
internal employee shareholders' approval is not required. That is one. And the second thing is there, when you are actually appointing a company secretary, as per the new act, the company secretary's appointment along with the remuneration itself is fixed by the board of directors.
Yes.
Any changes is also reviewed and it is agreed upon board of directors. If the company secretary is appointed as a company secretary and the internal auditor, automatically his remuneration will be reviewed by the board itself. That is the practice.
Okay. Next question by Mr. No, it's an answer by Mr. Maulik. He raised the query. Statutory, when we say no statutory, there is no specific prohibition for certification. Statutory auditor can't certify AOC 4 of the company inside appointed as a statutory auditor, because statutory auditor cannot provide certification service to the company, I suppose.
Correct.
Right. So that's why CA cannot certify.
CA cannot.
Statutory auditor cannot certify that AOC.
Yes.
So the question which was there, internal auditor statutory can certify AOC 4? No, it cannot be. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Maulik, for clarifying. Okay. Munal, you can continue.
Yeah. So as I conclude, this is how an internal audit process is carried out. Like I've covered the part like defining the audit, who is the internal auditor, who can be appointed, as well as the auditing process and the reports, till the part where the the internal audit report is issued to the management or the board of directors. And we can see that the company secretary can also be shouldered with the responsibility of conducting internal audit, provided he has the relevant expertise and knowledge in the particular field. And by taking, in case, I'm sure he's not qualified since beginning, but yes, everyone studies in their whole lifetime. So even he can take approvals and necessary what he can take approvals from the board of directors and conduct internal audit, which can help the company in achieving its goals as required.
Thank you, Mrunal. It was good presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
I will thank all panelists for their inputs. Mr. Bala, also, your experience was really vast and was helpful to everyone. Thank you for sharing knowledge. Mr. Sachin, your experience, and Mr. Nilesh.
Thank you.
And it is said that actually, like, this audit is kind of a specialized topic or area of service. So if one has inclination to work towards some diversified activities and having overall knowledge of the business, once you do this internal audit, you get the gamut of knowledge and you know the entire operation of the business in and out. It's a really very interesting knowledge. The one who is Brunal, just unmute yourself, no?
Yes, ma'am.
That really helps everyone. So everyone who is inclined to this kind of knowledge or kind of thing, they will really enjoy the internal audit.
Yes,
With
yes.
that, I hope more and more CS like Sachin and Nilesh will take up it, and of course our Mr. Bala will take up the internal audit as a profession and added responsibility, which is a area which is to be explored, and as a practicing CS as well, right, Mr. Bala?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks everyone for your time. Thanks panelists, Mr. Nilesh,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Sachin, Mr. Bala.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Somebody says there is one question.
Okay. Yeah, please.
What is the question, Nisha?
Yes, Nisha, you can unmute and question. What is management is not open to disclose? What not to disclose? Okay, to give information to internal auditor. Okay, then in that case, yes, I think rather I will ask panelist.
So as far as this part is concerned, if the internal audit is mandated by the Act, then management cannot say no in case for providing the information. It is a clear-cut violation of the provision. So internal auditor so appointed can definitely put a negative remark in their report, and which is considered by the statutory auditor, and hence management has to comply with this requirement.
Not only that, any negative remark, anything which is actually comes out either in the secretarial auditor report or internal auditor report or statutory auditor report, these are all need to be addressed in the board report.
Right.
Because when the statutory auditor comes, he is going to ask for the internal auditor report. Internal auditor will give the qualified report. Secretarial auditor, where applicable, they will also ask the internal audit report. That also will come actually. So in such a case, in the board report, it has to actually come out. If it is not coming out, again, statutory auditor is going to mention that. That is the issue here.
Yeah, and Mr. Sachin, you want to comment?
Actually, this question was right in the point of view of some small companies when voluntary audit is going on. But in case of the listed companies or where the act is applicable, definitely the internal audit report will take important things, and there is nothing to be like if they wanted to doesn't show the remarks or something. They have to take on a record for the board.
And Nisha, I like that when an internal audit assignment is taken or a position is taken, always it is that the procedure and the documentation required, that methodology is communicated in writing, and then you submit that these all the documents required and will be backed, the audit will be backed by this. So when this is communicated and when it is reported to audit committee or independent person, the person will ask all the supporting, and if you can't provide that and you have to say not available, that you can write it because you have already shared your process flow and the documents required. So if you have to say that attached, and if it is not given, you can say not available, and here you can communicate. So it's a kind of, as I told, it's a art of telling something without telling something.
Yeah.
Not only that, in case of the appointment of the external auditor, normally what happens, there is initially the letter is issued to the external auditor. There the letter will categorically say, we will actually provide all the required documents for the purpose of carrying out your audit. That will be one of the things which will be there. Okay. So what happens is, in that case, the external auditor who has got such a letter has actually got a contract with the company. They are supposed to comply with it. The non-compliances, if he wants, which can arise out of the Contract Act, violation of the Contract Act. That also is possible, but only thing in practical, many people may not be taking up. That is also there.
Yeah, Nikhil, you can share your view, please.
Yeah, in this matter, actually what happens, that assuming that internal audit is under the Companies Act, then there is an internal, audit committee is there. So internal auditor report are first shared with the audit.
Hello.
No
Nikhil?
voice problem.
Nikhil?
Yeah, I'm audible now.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
So normally this is under the Companies Act. So then it is a mandate wherever it is a mandatory, either it is a private company having a turnover crossing the threshold, etc. There is an audit committee. So what happens, the internal auditor, before he starts in the first meeting, he will share the scope of the work to be done. Now, wherein, let's say, X item is selected, and if the management refuses to share the information, he can straight away report to the board. Means internal audit, in turn it will go to the board. And also it will be taken cognizance by the statutory auditors.
Okay, right.
So it will be very difficult for management not to share the information. Yeah, if it is very confidential, you might say that of your team, only one senior person can come and have a look,
Right.
not take a copy, etc. Those things possible. But
No,
normally
that is always the case. You see, in fact, when it comes to the many, I think Dipti also will agree. Even many of the company secretaries in this forum also will agree. Normally, the statutory auditor, whenever they come, they actually wanted to see the minutes. My practical experience is, I have never shared the entire minutes with the statutory auditors. And not only that, I never shared the minutes with any of the, article clerk, etc. and other thing and all. I always said the minutes will be open only to the senior manager designated by the people only. That is also which is relevant to your audit purposes, not the entire minutes. That is what I used to actually practice and practiced. But of course, nowadays minutes are shown, but again, only at the senior level, not each and every people. And second thing is that normally copies are never given because of the confidential nature. It is not available. But the only thing is the certified true copy, which is relevant for the record purposes, is actually given in case of some financial arrangement or loan documentation and other things, etc. The certified copy is actually always given. That confidentiality aspect is always maintained by the company. Even the other party also understands.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Nikhil, for your comments. Thanks. Thanks, everyone, and for your sharing the knowledge and sharing your experience and raising the queries. And next week, we have a topic on FCRA, Foreign Contribution and Regulation Act. Please join there. It will be also an interesting topic to discuss. Thanks a lot. And
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks
Bye.
a lot. Thank you, Minal. You have done an excellent preparation with a good
Thank you,
homework.
sir. Thank you, sir.
And many compliments to you, definitely. And I also thanks to both the panelists who shared their practical views.
Thank you.
They had a lot of insight actually to coming to. I am very sure participants would have definitely benefited, and thanks for interacting with the many people. Have a good day. Enjoy. We'll meet next week. Thanks a lot. Take care.
till
Thank
then,
you. Thank you very
bye.
much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.